Okay, hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really happy to hear that the vacation that my father had with Mr. Thompson went really well, and they were able to become friends and sort of start this joint venture between our two companies.
Yes. Yes. I talked to Mr. Thompson, and he had nothing but good things to say about your father, both personally and business-wise. So, yeah, it sounds like they kind of just left it up to us to hash out the details and negotiate how this is going to work.
Right, so I know that we're on a bit of a time crunch because they do want to just get the proposal to them and look over it and make sure everything is good to go for the both of them. Um, so, the one thing that my father really wants to emphasize is that the relationship between both of our companies is handled with care and trust, and we want to make sure that we just build a solid foundation between the two of us so that we can, be successful together. Um, so to segue into that, did Mr. Thompson or you guys over at Med Device have any preferences regarding decision making or control?
So, yes, Mr. Thompson did have a few preferences. Do you want let me, I guess, just start out with his preferences and then
Mm-hmm.
try to, what do you think about that? Just try to hash them out like individually? Or do you want me to just like kind of let's do it individually. Let's start with, sorry, let's start with the decision making. Well, from my understanding, your father makes pretty much like the final call of all decision, and he wanted to keep it that way, but with himself, along with your father. What do you think about that?
Oh,
Oh,
let's
I'm sorry.
see. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. The GM. There will be a GM with who would basically bring all decisions to your father and Mr. Thompson.
Mm-hmm. So my father has an idea sort of along the same lines as that, where um, he thinks that they should be made by consensus between our two companies, and that the general manager should have the authority to make, day-to-day decisions, but kind of like you said, if there's something more important that needs to be discussed, the GM can elevate it to my father and Mr. Thompson. So that definitely sounds good to me, and it kind of sounds like we're thinking the same thing there.
Yes, I agree.
And let's see. So I know that there's different percentages of how much our two companies are able to put forth monetarily. Do you think that would have any effect on the amount of decision making power that our two entities have?
To answer your question, yes, but only in this for the reasons of quality control and knowledge of med devices. But it would still be very much a 60-40 in decision making and like we mentioned, the final decisions will be made by your father and Mr. Thompson, and so who both have the best interests of the companies. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. The
It
one
would be
thing.
equal with just a slightly bit, I guess. For example, the board of directors would be made of 5 members, possibly, 3 being from MedDevice and 2 being from MedLee, which would equal out the proportion of the capital contribution.
Let's see. So my father did note that he would prefer that the decision making be as equal as possible, just because he believes that our unique expertise and our knowledge regarding the market is very essential to this joint venture's survival, especially because it's important to use the resources that we have as well. So connections with doctors, hospitals, as well as our relations within Thailand. So he is wanting a bit more equality regarding that. Do you guys over at MedDevice have any flexibility with that, or even with the board, we could have it rotate where for X number of years we have 3 members from your side and 2 from my side, and then after X number of years we could rotate it to where we have 3 on the board and you guys have 2, so that way we're both kind of, cycling through that ruling in a way.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Would it be possible to just do a 6-member board, and that way there's 3 from each?
Definitely.
And that way it's maybe more consistent and fair and equal, like your other ones.
Definitely, I like that idea.
Okay, for sure. Adding one person to the board, in my opinion, would only make it better for as far as making decisions. So I don't think Mr. Thompson is really going to have an issue with making the board members, so that decision making and control is equal as possible. Because, like you said, your relations in Thailand is very valuable to the company. So I would agree with that.
Okay, perfect. And if we do, for some reason, find ourselves in a deadlock of sorts, we could always use Mr. Thompson to sort of break that deadlock, since, he is contributing a bit more to the company monetarily versus us over here at Lee Medical. So we could kind of work it that way, where we have 6 board members, and then Mr. Thompson can be the tiebreaker if needed.
I understand. Okay. So what's the next? Should we put Mr. Thompson down as the tiebreaker? Or, what if your father doesn't agree with him?
Let's see. So regarding that, I think that also ties in a little bit to conflict resolution.
True.
So my father believes that should a dispute arise, he likes to emphasize the relationship between him and Mr. Thompson. And personally, my father believes that, if there's any issues, that he and Mr. Thompson can find a resolution via a consultation rather than going through the courts or anything like that. So if there is, sort of a disagreement, I guess we could use both of them as a tiebreaker, because if there were to be an issue, they would need to consult with each other anyways regarding that.
Okay. I agree. So the tiebreaker, if there is one, will go to both your father and Mr. Thompson, right? Okay. So I'll put that in the preliminary.
Oh, and sorry, just a note, my free Zoom is ending in 10 minutes. Sorry.
Okay.
So if we get kicked out early, then we can just go ahead and hop back in.
Okay. Alrighty. So you did bring up the conflict resolution matter, management matter, and we can talk about that. So your father does not want any courts involved for any dispute whatsoever, correct?
Let's see. So I don't believe he's against going to the courts, but I believe he just thinks it's not very necessary, just because of how close he and Mr. Thompson are. I think he believes that they can work it out internally between the two of them, but I don't think he's hard set and very against going to the courts. I think it's more so just a cultural preference for him. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I definitely see the culture difference, and Mr. Jackson did mention something about it in international arbitration. So I think it's a little less like a little less formal as far as handling disputes than the court system, because Mr. Thompson did recommend a California court system, but I agree with you that he would say that it most likely wouldn't be necessary, and that more of like a consultation or arbitration, mediation even, would be probably a conflict resolution mechanism that we would agree on.
Yeah, I think that,
does that say that fits your priorities and interests as well?
Yes, it does. And definitely, I agree with you. If we need to, we can always seek mediation if there is something that they're both stuck on or not able to resolve. So I think versus the courts, maybe we could take a few levels, like let's say it could be consultation first and then mediation. And then if that doesn't work, then we could look into some court options.
Yes, I love that idea as well.
Perfect.
You could go to, so we figured out the board members, and now for staffing, for the general manager, what were your what are your needs or thoughts on how the general manager should be appointed for MedLee?
Right. So for staffing, our company has always been a family business, just because my father really hammers on the concept of trust and being able to trust his employees. So for him, he would prefer that the Lee team be comprised of myself as the general manager, my cousin Ian as my assistant / financial analyst, and my friend Adji as the sales rep and secretary. He also believes that the office in Thailand should primarily be staffed with Lee Medical Supply employees, just because they have connections with the customers and clients, familiarity with the language, and knowledge of how business is conducted in Thailand. But most importantly, we would prefer that the general manager should at least be from Lee Medical to uphold those connections and relations with both customers and hospitals. But definitely, if you guys would like to send over some med device employees, I'd be more than happy to have them work under myself and provide their expertise and their information on the medical equipment, and definitely we can add more people as necessary. But what are your thoughts on that?
So, Mr. Johnson would prefer, of course, that the GM be appointed by Med Device, because of the quality control reasons and knowledge of Med Devices. But you mentioned having people underneath you, like such as secretaries or office assistants. I guess he kind of switched around, like that the secretaries and office assistants be appointed by Lee Medical to help the general manager. But I get what you're saying, since the offices aren't going to be overseas, that it could be more beneficial
What
to
we
kind of
could
switch around a general manager, maybe have a manager from Med Device and the general manager be from Lee. And the issue is just the quality control reasons. But we're not overseas for that. We already have quality devices. Our reason for being over there is to gain connection, which would make sense why the general manager should be from Lee Medical. So, I mean, that's something that Mr. Thompson, I'm going to have to obviously approve that, and I can give him the reason why. What are your thoughts?
let's see. So I believe that since my father is a man who really values trust, and he also trusts Mr. Thompson, what we could do is we could have the general manager be from Lee Medical, but then the other positions, such as the financial analyst, or even some of the secretary or assistant positions, those we could have a not open enrollment, open application for both employees from MedLee, or excuse me, from Med Device and Lee Medical, and we can have the board select who they think is most qualified from our two entities to fill those positions. So that way it's not too much from you guys or from us, but we still have that general manager from Lee Medical to sort of facilitate everything going on in Thailand. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think it would make sense. You mentioned financial advisor position. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. So when you mentioned yourself being the general manager, your cousin being a manager, and what were the other positions you had?
Let's see. There was a sales rep and a secretary position that my friend is currently doing, but oops. Okay, let's hop back in this meeting. Okay. Sorry about that. We are running into some issues with trying to get this negotiation recorded, but we're really trying, and we're really trying our best. Zoom through mobile devices is not the easiest to work, but we came up with a solution of sorts. So if this audio is a bit difficult to hear, apologies for that. We're really trying our best. Zoom wasn't allowing us the option to record via iPad or iPhone, and Kaitlyn was having some issues with trying to record from her laptop. So here we are, and we shall see when Kaitlyn can hop back into the meeting. And for now, we will pause until Kaitlyn hops back on and we can resume the negotiation. Oh, here she is. Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, let me flip this over. Okay. So, sorry, what were you saying?
Alright, so the positions that Mr. Thompson had in mind for staffing was to have 4 sales reps, 3 appointed by medical, and 1 by med device. So I'm thinking, because sales reps are really strong, maybe we can have 2 managers. Maybe we could have 1 manager be your cousin, and then the other manager be appointed by med device. Do you think that would be reasonable, or do you think it would be counterproductive to have 2 managers?
It may be counterproductive to have 2 managers, but I definitely like the idea of us for sure sort of but appointing these sales representatives, and then you guys can also send over one from your team. But if we do that, then let's see. Are there any positions that Mr. Thompson would definitely and 100% like to have filled by med device employees?
Well, I wouldn't say that. As far as I would say that Mr. Thompson really wants to highlight the anti-nepotism rule that we have at med device, which is basically there being promotion based on merit and fair treatment. And so at med device, they have this policy where no family can work if there's a family member in upper management to avoid favoritism. Not saying that Lee Medical does that. Mr. Thompson really just wants to make sure that view isn't accepted by the current employees at med device, and that there's no claims or pointing of fingers for favoritism. Does that make sense?
Right. Let's see.
I don't know if you would be flexible on that standard.
So I think for the sake of this joint venture, there will need to be flexibility, just because you guys are, accommodating us for our cultural perspective in terms of the conflict resolution. So I can definitely go back to my father and let him know that we also need to respect your office culture and how you prefer to organize your staffing, and we can try and rearrange where some of my family members currently are in the company. So for example, we could move some people around, definitely. because my cousin Ian and my friend Adji, who wanted to be the financial analyst and the sales rep, are also doubling as assistants / secretaries. So if you like, I can have a talk with both of them and see if they're fine with taking the back seat and being an assistant and a secretary, and we can fill the financial analyst and fill that position with someone from Med Device, so that way we're not having so many people from Lee Medical in higher positions.
I think that would be really appreciated, and I think that would help us meet in the middle, both your father and Mr. Thompson comfortable. Like you said, I agree with that.
Okay, and definitely we can also have that open application for other roles that need to be filled, so that way, you know, there isn't any favoritism and there's equal opportunity on both sides, because you never know. The way my family's always run it is we've shadowed my father, and we've sort of learned very hands-on from him. So definitely, if there's someone who's more qualified, I think we can respect that and make some changes there as well.
All right, we appreciate that. How about we set up another meeting right now to go over some readjustments to the staffing after you get a little bit more sense of what your father would be comfortable, and I would get a little more certain Mr. Johnson would be comfortable after we explain the reasonings to that. What do you think?
I think that sounds really good.
Okay. Because I don't know if we'll have enough time to do it. Plus, we need their input. So we'll put that. We'll renegotiate the staffing, and like we said, we'll do it a week from now since time is of the essence.
Right, and this is just meant, I think my father said it's just meant to be a proposal, so if things need to be changed or tweaked, then that's definitely fine.
Okay. Yep.
So I guess...
The last point would be the distribution of profit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what were you thinking?
So for the profit distribution, my father would like to maintain as much flexibility as possible regarding this, and he would prefer to hold consultations with Mr. Thompson on profit sharing needs as they arise.
Conference or consultation do you think? Like annually?
Let's see. Give me one moment. Okay. So, let's see. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. So, you recommended that your father would prefer to be flexible with the distribution of profit, and hold consultations with Mr. Thompson throughout the fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so would you say semi-annually or annually, only because Mr. Thompson prefers to not remove any profit for the first 5 years? But I know he's flexible on that, as you guys require. So I'm thinking maybe is annually too long, or for the consultations to be had about profit?
I think
Did them every year.
I think semi-annually would be good, just so that we have more points to touch base on, or at least more check-in points. So that way we can make sure that we're having clear communication regarding that. And if anything does come up, we can always address it then versus the annual meeting.
Okay. I definitely think that's doable because we're not agreeing to taking out profit. We're just having a conversation, want to review. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I will put down in the proposal not to commit to withdrawing any profit, but just to consult and sit down between the owners so that they can see how we're progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think that's all we needed to talk about. Thank you for meeting with me today.
Thank you as well. Thank you for your time and your very good points you made.
Of course. And now I'll just stop the recording.